With the recent closing of Volition, the studio behind Red Faction, Saints Row and many others over the last 30 years, I got to thinking, why is there no real competition in the GTA? If you look back at a couple of years ago during the PS2 and PS3 era, there were a heap of games that tried to do what GTA did, and sometimes they even had some ideas that didn't exist in the GTA games at the time. Game series like Driver, True Crime, Scarface, The Getaway, Mafia, just to name a few, all came and gone over the years. Driver ended up with Driver 3, that was an absolute mess of a game, and later with San Francisco that did something interesting and different but seemingly didn't warrant another game in the franchise. True Crime was owned by Activision, so those developers are probably now working on Call of Duty, and the other games just kind of run its course or just faded into obscurity. There's also plenty of more recent examples like Watch Dogs, Sleeping Dogs, Nintendogs, Cyberpunk 2077, and maybe even Far Cry in some sense. Out of those games, I'd argue that Sleeping Dogs and Cyberpunk are probably the closest you'll get to a GTA game in terms of the world. Ironically enough, Sleeping Dogs was meant to be a next True Crime game. I think we can all remember walking through the market and Sleeping Dogs and soaking in the fresh sounds of
"You look like you could use a pork bun."
We're strolling through Night City. These two games are pretty good examples of games that have a good vibe to them and get pretty close to what Rockstar's quality of open world games typically are. And some stuff, I'd argue, is also better. Seriously, if you haven't played Sleeping Dogs, I'd highly recommend it. The story and the way that they handle everything is pretty cool. The intro though might remind you of Vice City. GTA has always had this level of detail and refinement in their worlds, or just Rockstar worlds as a whole. From NPCs roaming around with phone conversations to random events that can occur. It's stuff like that you don't really see in any other games. Often games like Watch Dogs decide to take place in London and then do their best to make it feel like an empty shell that is nothing close to how London would actually feel if you lived in it. Other games like Mafia 3 had a great story and a vibe, and just the setting of the 1950s and 60s with the wonderful soundtrack they had going on while you're cruising down the street listening to CCR and all those wonderful hits from the 60s, but then they just managed to mess it all up by having boring, repetitive gameplay loop that just turns off a lot of people, resulting into an unlikelihood of that game ever getting a sequel again. It's what happened to Saints Row as well. It's not a secret that the reboot that was released last year had really nothing to do with the Saints Row game, aside from the fact that it said it on the box and that the world felt pretty dead and you could just blow up a bunch of stuff. Sadly, because of the way that the gaming industry has become over the past couple of years, you end up with a game in the franchise that didn't perform as well as it should have, and then publishers start thinking twice before greenlighting another GTA style game, or well, any game for that matter. Nowadays, a game doesn't really have that 1 or 2 year life cycle anymore that you had in the PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3 days. Most games nowadays take at least 3 years to make and, well, probably cost at least $100 million if you want to have a somewhat decent AAA game. Would you want to risk that kind of time and money to make a competitor to a franchise which last entry has sold 180 million copies? And let's be honest, the moment you release a GTA style game, everyone and their mom is going to compare it to GTA. And this has a very good reason. It's because Rockstar has set the bar, and the last time that bar was raised was with Red Dead Redemption 2, which, well, everyone knows was also made by them. It really is a shame because competition means that development studios push each other to one-up each other, and thus gamers benefit from evolutions in the genre and gaming as a whole. I think it's pretty fair to say that if it wasn't for those quote-unquote GTA clones back in the PS2 and PS3 game era, GTA wouldn't have become the game that it did. I would argue that it's because of those games that were basically being in competition with GTA that Rockstar had to basically show everyone like, look, we are the best ones, we are the only ones that can make Grand Theft Auto. The same goes for GTA Online. If GTA Online actually had some competition, Rockstar might have stepped up their game and didn't settle for 2 DLCs a year, because they're the only game in the genre, they're the only online game that exists, and their only online competition is Red Dead Online, which again is also made by them. It isn't to say that there aren't plenty of open world games out there nowadays. Heck, if anything, it's become a trend in recent years, but most of those worlds feel bland and like there's something missing, particularly looking at those, Ubisoft games. Naturally. I'd love to mention Starfield in here, but I honestly haven't played it enough to really tell you how great that open world is. Though it's been great fun so far, for sure.
Follow me on Twitch.
Maybe, just maybe, there are some devs cooking up something special out there, and if not, I guess we'll just have to wait until GTA 6 releases. Until then, let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like, subscribe, and become a member, like GTA Plus, Left Lane Looney, and Notorious Jam. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later.